The Ullapool Caber is a pile of trash, but it's a really fun pile of trash. I would argue that the Caber is a contender for the worst weapon in TF2, alongside some of these beauties. But I still kinda love it, because it so perfectly suits the Demoman's personality, as well as the ridiculous nature of TF2 as a whole. The Caber is a very unique melee weapon that explodes on impact. It will do approximately 120 damage on hit, although this does vary, and then it will do a base damage of 55. And will also do 52 to 56 self damage. It has a massively increased weapon switch time, which I found was very noticeable and felt painfully slow. It also swings a tiny bit slower too. Oh, and it also has no random crits. I know, insane. It has an awesome inspect animation and a really cool taunt you don't see very often. And anyone looking at it would expect it to grant a taunt kill, but unfortunately it doesn't. It also has possibly the best description in the game, high yield Scottish face removal. A sober person would throw it. Beautiful. And finally it's part of the Expert Ordnance set, which was added to the game in December 2010 with the Australian Christmas update. There are three main ways to use this thing. 1. The Caber Knight. Possibly the most viable option, although still questionable, and after you've used it for the first time, you feel like a bit of an idiot carrying around this thing that does barely any damage. At least as a Demo Knight you have a bigger health pool, and therefore you're more likely to be able to tank that self damage. Number 2, the Market Caber. Caberer? Caber gardening? Not sure. Now I am biased because I love the sticky jumper, but this for me was by far the most fun you could have with this weapon. And the side benefit is, at least you can get back to spawn quickly to regenerate the weapon. And finally, number 3, being a normal Demoman who just happens to have the Caber equipped. This provides basically no benefit, but it's certainly a surprise when you whip it out. There are a multitude of reasons why this weapon is trash, but I think there are 3 main ones. The biggest one for me is that typically when you're using a melee weapon, it's often a last resort, and in many hand-to-hand combat situations, you're going to have low health. So the last thing you want at this point is to use a weapon that deals self-damage, because it's likely not going to end well. Another reason this weapon doesn't really make any sense to use is that the Caber is not that dissimilar to shooting a grenade at someone at point blank range. If you're a classic Demoman or hybrid demo, then you will have the grenade launcher equipped. Loading another shot in your grenade launcher takes 1.24 seconds, whereas switching to the Caber takes 1 second. Add the attack speed on top of that, which is 0.25 plus 20% of 0.25, which is 20% of 20 plus which equals 0.3. This means that it actually takes longer to whip out your melee and hit the enemy with it than load another shot in your grenade launcher. Sure, you're going to do another 20 damage, but at least with your grenades, you can try and avoid self-damage by moving away. The third and final reason this weapon does not make any sense to use is because random crits exist. Your bottle, or ideally your pan, will very often do more damage than the Caber, simply because, let's be honest, every other swing you're bound to get a random crit. And when you do, you'll normally finish off the enemy as well as not dealing any self damage. For me, these are 3 of the biggest reasons that the weapon is not viable from a practical perspective. On top of this, the weapon is also a little bit buggy, dealing inconsistent damage, and there's also this visual bug where the Caber looks like it's exploded when it hasn't. So all in all, it's probably not the most practical weapon in the world, but that doesn't stop it being a hell of a lot of fun. Is it ever viable? Okay, maybe if you snuck up behind 5 low HP scouts grouped together on the payload and you're able to take them all out with 1 swing. Or maybe if you're jumping through the air at the beginning of a game of KOF and you catch the entire team grouped together, ready to take an insane amount of splash damage to help your team win the first fight. In my opinion, the best way you can use this weapon is as a demo knight, just because at least you can get that charge and crit combo. But having to go back to spawn to the resupply cabinet to use the weapon a second time, it very quickly gets monotonous and laborious. That's why, as I said before, at least with the sticky jumper, you can get back to spawn real quick and charge this thing up. And I found it the most fun on smaller game modes such as Koth, where you didn't have to travel too far to get back into the fight. We're not exactly being inundated with updates at the moment. There's a small chance this might not get fixed anytime soon. However, I still find this a really interesting question to consider. There's a few things you could do and a few things that I'm going to pose to you guys. Number 1, we could add a recharge meter. Done. If I'm being brutally honest, I still don't think this would make the weapon viable, but it would simply make it way less frustrating and just more fun to play around with. You could easily imagine the weapon having a, say, 10-second charge time, and then you're able to use it again, and this I don't think would feel too broken. I had even considered the idea of maybe having the weapon reset every time you pick up metal, but that seems like it could be a bit insane. But you know, remember, using this twice in a row is suicide anyway. Unless you've got a crazy buff, you physically cannot use this weapon many times in a row, as you're just going to end up killing yourself. One other option that I think is more interesting is playing around a little bit with the idea of the boop. When the caber is used, you're propelled directly upward, and the enemy is often booped away too. So one option would be to not make this weapon about an insane amount of damage, but more about just booping enemies away, and maybe using it as an escape option when you're low on health. I know that doesn't quite fit with the idea of a grenade going off, but it could be super fun and a more viable option for this weapon. Other things I've considered are giving the weapon more synergy with the lock and load so that the ordnance set makes more sense, but I'm not exactly sure what you could do here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below on this one. You could also reduce the self damage, or maybe have it set alight to opponents. There are loads of directions you could go with this, and I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below, because for me, this is one of the most interesting questions. How could we make the caber viable, but still be super fun and quirky? Oh, and also, how do we fix it? Just allow you to taunt kill with it. That would be enough. I just want to taunt kill snipers with it. It would be amazing. At the end of the day, is this better than stock? Clearly not. Stock will very often one-hit a target because of the insane amount of crits you can get, and using stock won't kill you in the process. But when you are able to take an enemy down with this thing, even if you go down with the ship, there's nothing quite as stylish. Especially if you've just landed on their head. I can only really speak with complete confidence when talking about the original Demoman, and in this instance, well, when I was playing seriously with my normal loadout, it felt like this weapon provided no additional benefit to me. In fact, more than most classes, having a melee weapon that doesn't deal self-damage to fall back on is really useful. And I'm fairly certain it caused me many deaths in situations where I may well have survived if I was using another weapon. And I wouldn't even be surprised if, on average, I do less damage overall with the caber just because of all those crazy crits you get with the pan, which has a 100% crit rate, by the way. But this trusty old boomstick is ridiculous, and it's the kind of thing that makes playing TF2 so much fun. This weapon is meant to be stupid, and honestly, I don't mind too much it existing in the exact state that it's in. Everyone knows it's not viable, everybody knows it's just a meme, and that's why when a crazed Demoman whips it out in-game, it's an absolute joy to behold. It's trash, but it's fun as heck.
You get for touching God.
We have lost the control point.